All right, so welcome to the Freckle training. Can you guys give me a thumbs up if you could see my screen or the window? Okay, cool. All right, so I'm Amanda Pursuto. I'm the 7th grade teacher here at, I was gonna say Oceanside, not Oceanside, Santa Ana. Maybe I wish I was in Oceanside. At Santa Ana, and this is gonna be actually my first year teaching 7th grade at scholarship prep, but I can just keep moving up. Started in 2nd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and now I just keep going up. I'm convinced it's because my daughter is in 7th grade and I've kind of traveled with her as she's gone up, so I kind of know how best to support her. But today we're going to be diving into Freckle. I'm using a Prezi presentation and it's just going to be self-led. I'm not presenting it, but let's just dive right in. All right, so I like to always post kind of a session agenda so you kind of know the breakdown of what we'll be doing. For those of you, most of you are new to Freckle, some of you have used it, but we're gonna go over some innovative ways, and I really wanna talk about how best to use supplemental curriculum because I have a certain way of thinking about curriculum in general. We'll review the student dashboard, the staff dashboard, just highlighting it, but everything at the end, I'll show you a resource page and you can access those videos as well. So it's not gonna be a walkthrough navigation. I want you guys to really get something from this presentation. At the end, I will do a Q&A. So at any time during the presentation, just add questions to the chat box. I won't be looking at them during the presentation, but at least I will be able to answer them at the end, and then we'll open it up for you. And hopefully you guys will have some time to do some self-paced exploration, look into the other supplemental curriculum presentations that are gonna be out there, because this is it. After this, you have nothing to do for the rest of the day except all the other things on your agenda, right? But no other meeting. I will send you off directly from here to go work on whatever you need to work on. All right, so whenever I come up with professional development or teaching, I always think of all of these types of questions. Some of these were your questions that you asked on the survey, and some of them are just for in my own head and thoughts as I'm designing this. So one thing was, how can we as educators really transform the practice of digital learning, right? How can we use Freckle and incorporate more collaborations with our students virtually? How do we get more engagement output? How do we make it accessible to kindergartners all the way up to 8th graders? So there's all these questions on top of that. How do we really, use students with us to co-design, right? How do we use our empathy, the empathy model, and just kind of relating to students to build these elements into our digital practices? One that I really thought about, which kind of led this, is, can learning itself be designed, or can it only be designed for, right? So I personally believe that we cannot just design, or learning can't just be designed. We have to design to get learning, and it has to be different, and it looks different for our students that we get, which you haven't even met yet, most of you. So that goes into kind of my philosophy. Curriculum is great. Having a book is fine. Having online supplemental resources is fine. The problem that I find with curriculum in general is it's built, it's a big business that you push out. So it has to be made, used by many different types of people. It's not personalized. It's not meant to be personalized. A lot of times standards are woven within it, obviously, but it doesn't necessarily teach those standards. It teaches you lots of ways. It gives you lots of options to teach those standards. But really, you guys are the educators. You guys as educators are curators of learning. So how can we curate learning for our students? How can we pull from our core curriculum? How can we pull from our supplemental curriculum to make an educational experience that meets the needs of our students? And that is where the design thinking process comes into play. So I hear a lot of, questions even yesterday or in any PD I've ever been to about curriculum, about following, the curriculum, the modules, everything, and not even questioning it. You don't even know your students yet, so how could you possibly be designing lessons for your students? That to me is like mind-boggling. We have to be able to empathize with our students, right? We have to be able to kind of see it from their worldview, I can't speak today, but uncovering underlying issues that they may have that may inhibit types of learning, especially through the screen, since we don't have them in person. How can we understand the context and what their lives are like and their moments of need are, right? So when we're designing curriculum and we're pulling in right now, I know a lot of us are you know, let's put our first few weeks together. Let's put our month together. Let's build these lessons. You're building for a single event and you're not thinking end-to-end processes. So before I even dive into Freckle, I just want to challenge you to kind of think of, okay, know your standards. What do we do as educators? We teach to the standards, but use core curriculum and pull from supplemental curriculum and kind of curate this awesome learning experience. Curators are expert learners. That's what we are. We're expert learners. We're kind of the manager and the overseer, the facilitator of education. So we need to make it as engaging as possible. We need to inspire and excite students to pursue these educational outcomes that we want for them. So going into this PD, I really hope that you are looking at all these items, but we're not just using Freckle. We're not just using Wit and Wisdom. We're not just using Eureka. With Fidelity, we're curating these lessons for our students based on their need once we meet them and their learning styles. Sorry. Welcome to my TED Talk. Did you guys know that? You're like, I came to a Freckle PD. I did not come to this. All right, so why Freckle then? It has tons of rigorous content. It's aligned to the standards, so it's not broken down by, you know, units that a curriculum designer or big company is overseeing. It's just standards based. So you could go to the domain, you can go to the strand, you can go to the exact standard, and you can just work from there. It's aligned to the CASP. A lot of the test questions are really difficult, just like the CASP would be, where there's multiple answers, there's open-ended answers, and that type of thing. It's very versatile. They have, obviously, the 4 subject areas. Adaptive practice, which I've seen adaptive practice in a few different curriculums, never like Freckle. And then you can pull tons of data from this. So now we're going to dive into the part of this where we get to just dive into Freckle. All right, so Freckle dashboards. So the dashboard is awesome. I just want to go over kind of an overview, an umbrella, the main idea, I guess. In math, there's adaptive practice, targeted practice, inquiry-based learning, and benchmark assessments. In ELA, same thing. It really focuses on word skill, word study, vocab. You can highlight, again, by specific strand, specific genre. I always, you know, kids always say Pacific instead of specific. Yeah, I just said it. Social studies, we actually don't have access to this part of it, but social studies is woven into the ELA articles and readings. And then we do have access to the science articles as well, which they do have some explorations. It's okay if you want to use it, like pull an article every once in a while, but it's not my favorite to use for science specifically. These are videos that are embedded. We're not going to watch them, obviously, but I created them, and this is going to be on our resource page. So if you don't want to rewatch the whole video and you just want specific parts, you can go to these specific parts. But I just wanted to break down before I actually go to the website what we'll be reviewing. So we're going to be looking over standards. We're going to be looking over the adaptive practice. You guys were all interested in these, by the way. I took your survey needs and was thinking about that. We're going to look at it from a student's point of view, what the students see on their dashboard as far as assignments and adaptive practice goes. And then also the types of assessments. I'm not going to dive in. Again, that's a video that I posted onto the resource page, but that to me is a waste of time to do a whole group. All right, I'm going to do the same thing for ELA. So when you get to, can I get one more thumbs up if you guys can see the Freckle dashboard or login? Okay, cool. Sometimes I talk, and if I don't look at the chat box, so if you guys are like, we can't see anything, I wouldn't know unless I saw some of your faces like freaking out. All right, so this is the Freckle dashboard. It used to be called Front Row. I'm not quite sure why it changed to Freckle. I don't know, but I've liked the term Front Row a lot, but now it's Freckle. So we're going to log in as a teacher. You just log in with your Google, and from what I heard Alate said, you are already set up. As long as you have your scholarship email, you have access to the Freckle training. All right. So you just log in with Google, and then you will see your overlying dashboard. I believe everyone was new to Freckle except, and those of you who took the survey, there was like 4 or 5 of you who've used it before. So you'll log in with your account. I have so many tabs open, and whenever I record, it takes a lot of time to do things or load. All right, so your very first dashboard that you see is going to just easily be like a tab that you can open for each item. It will talk about the math overview, the standards-based practice, and then fact fluency practice. It will also have for ELA the same items. It will have an overview, standards-based practice, and then an article and story library. And then science is also just by instructional units, which is really strand or umbrella term. You can also access these, which I never go to this first little dashboard. I always go to the side under subjects. Yesterday, we heard some of you are a little bit anxious about going into a new grade level or using a new curriculum, or you're a first year teacher. I know when I was a first year teacher, they didn't necessarily teach me the standards for every single grade level. So when you get hired, you have to really be able to unpack and go and look at all these standards, which is fine. But what I love most about this is it has everything broken down by standard, but the best part is it gives you examples under that standard, right? So if I'm looking at a list of first grade standards and I'm like, okay, and by the way, they have all of the grade levels here. You can also look at the domains. Freckle specific, it has financial literacy, which is huge. So in every single grade, it adds a domain of financial literacy, which is amazing. And so you can weave that into your regular domain push out or standard push out. But let's say I'm doing, let's do second grade. And I want to work on measurement and data. It will have all of your standards here. And so when you go to view resources, it will give you kind of everything that is included or possible. You can assign straight from here for targeted practice in this particular standard. You can print worksheets or at least generate worksheets. Those worksheets you can then put onto other forums. They have inquiry-based learning lessons, which we will go over in a little bit, and they have just regular benchmark assessments. They also have skills and prerequisites. Yesterday we were talking about what do our kids need coming in. They have a list of those skills and prerequisites that they would need coming in order to do this or complete this standard. They also have videos. These are instructional videos. They're not the best and most entertaining for students, but I know if you're teaching 8th grade math and it's your first time and you're like, wait, I don't really remember how to do it, it's kind of nice for you as a teacher to kind of look at it and you're like, oh, okay. Another thing is they have example questions. Well, this is for the prerequisites, but these are awesome because it just generates these awesome, pretty visual questions, and you can kind of see what's expected of the students to learn by the end of this standard. So that's actually for the prerequisites. If you want targeted practice examples, they have targeted practice examples. And you can see it's very word heavy. If I go into kindergarten and first grade, it's also word heavy. However, when I show you the student dashboard, you will see that everything can be said out loud to them. They just hit the little speech button and it'll be read to them. And there's tons of visual supports as well. So it's helping them access that. All right, so we went over standards. Let's go over adaptive practice. So you can assign adaptive practice. I'm actually gonna toggle, I'm gonna go into class as a student. Let's see, I'm gonna go in under one of my old students to see what he has on his. What I love about the student dashboard for math is that they get daily prizes. If they log in every day, you can see when they log in, the prize will be coins. It keeps a collection at the top right of money. Then they can buy things for their little avatar. So that's kind of fun. It's usually they get a Freckle, so you can see he bought this little penguin. And by the way, these were 6th graders last year and they still love it. So they love to get the money and buy things. So once they keep practicing, they can unlock their store and go to the store. But this is the dashboard. It has total minutes that they've been working on it. They have adaptive practice, so you can go straight to adaptive. I love that they have goal setting in here. Remember, this is like a one-stop shop for everything. So they can set a goal. Let's say they want to work on accuracy. And they want accuracy to be 2 times higher. So it says, I want to get at least 80% accuracy 2 times. So they start that goal, and then when they work, so now they have their goal. And they have time left, and so they can try to meet that goal. They also will have on here any assignments under their math tab. They will have assignments as well. This is the adaptive part. This is the best part. They always give a pretest, which I'll show you for the little ones in a second. I know he doesn't have to take any pre-tests. Obviously, he's not in my class anymore, but it will show what level they're on. So he was on level 13, how many stars they have, and then any flags. So think of it just like a pathway. When you take a pre-test, it will jump them up. So let's say he took a pre-test, it could already start him at 13 because he already showed proficiency in all the other areas. Once you get to certain places, you can also collect rewards and get coins. Let's go into one of these adaptive practices.
Can I ask a quick clarifying question?
Yes.
I was just wondering, you're able to actually assign them
yes.
work from specific standards, and they're also able to just regularly practice things.
Yes, so they have an adaptive, and then they have, you can do assign. You can actually assign adaptive.
Nice.
You can set them up, or, so it's, let's say they're pre-test, they didn't really try, and you're like, okay, you're not at kindergarten level, I know you're at second grade. You can go in and override their pre-test.
Okay.
Because that's happened a few times where I'm like, why are you on counting and, you know, like some first grade? I'm like, no, nice try. So it's like, you can adjust that. And then there's targeted practice, which we'll get into assignments in a second. I wanted to kind of go over the features on this. And this is a sixth grader. So all the way up to like eighth grade, they still have these accessibility features.
Which shape is split into 3 equal shares?
So it will read to them.
A, B, and C, D.
It also reads the options at the bottom. They have hints, which are pretty awesome. And then they also have videos. So those instructional videos that I told you, which granted are not that fun to watch, it is helpful. So if they're struggling, they can go to the video to watch. And another favorite part is it says ask a friend. So we'll show them their friends that are doing well in that area. Now, normally if you're in class and they're working in stations, they could just go to that friend, you know, the whole ask 3 before me situation. However, we don't have that ability. But if they're in a break-off room, or what I have is in upper grade, we have a Padlet that's a community board. They could just go straight to that community board and ask those specific students for help. But that's a cool feature. Then they can write on this anywhere they want, so they can use it as a whiteboard. And then they have access to virtual manipulatives that they can add. And then the erase feature is really easy because you can just click it and you don't have to like they don't need fine motor skills necessarily to like try to like erase the like doodle, or you know how some kids are just like, ooh, a feature. And I have a kid going into second grade as well. And I know my son will be like, let me just do the whole thing. I just want it all to be like one color. So the tools are awesome, but they also can get distracting. But they have a little toolbar at the top, so it's usually 10 questions or less. You can also assign that. So when we go to assignments, you can assign a 3-question, a 5-question, or a 10-question targeted practice. So it could be used as an exit ticket and very, very slow. All right. I love how it also says, are you sure you want to leave?
Not so fast. Are you sure you want to leave?
And yes, I do. I want to leave. So the dashboard is really easy to engage. Obviously, I only taught math last year, so he didn't have any ELA assignments, so that's why that's not showing up, but I'll show you what it would look like when we deep dive into the ELA. The only thing about toggling between student, so I can go in and I can see any student just by their name and knowing your class code for that. I suggest I have Chrome and I have Safari. I usually have the student log in on Safari, and then I have mine on Chrome, so I don't have to keep logging back in between student and teacher, because it will kick you out of teacher if you log in as a student. Just a tip that I've learned over the time, so I can go in and see exactly what they're seeing. So they're like, I don't see my assignment. And you're like, really? Screenshot. Yes, you do. Just go to this. Okay. So let's go in real quick. Do you guys have questions about math specifically before I go into ELA? And then we'll go, I'm going to talk about inquiry-based learning, and then we'll open it up to more questions. But anyone have specific? I am going to go over assignments right now and reports on math real quick too. No? Okay. So under math content, obviously you kind of have, this is almost like your math dashboard. So it talks about online practice versus printable resources within adaptive and targeted. So kind of like what you were saying, you can assign adaptive, you can assign targeted practice, and you can print those also. Then there's fact fluency practice. These are always nice. I usually have them practice multiplication facts, addition facts, basic facts. Even in middle school, they need those. And they have access to these on their own. So on their adaptive dashboard, I don't know if you saw on Ivan's, it had the adaptive practice, but then it had fact practice. And so they can also do that adaptively without you having to assign it to them. So at any age, they have access to that. And then you'll have your inquiry-based lessons and your assessments. Again, I just like to go to assignments sometimes and assign it this way. This is always how I assign it. And I'm going to give you a few tips and tricks on assigning that I have found over the years of using this. So when you go to add assignment, these boxes will show up by subject. So let's say I wanted to assign math. They give you all the options of what you could possibly assign. Oh, sorry. Let's go back. All right, so I want to assign math. And I want to do targeted practice. So you could assign a benchmark assessment. Benchmark assessments could be whole domain. It could be by standard. And the reason why it's a benchmark different, why a benchmark is different than targeted practice is in the reports, it will show you their growth over time in those domains. So targeted practice. Checking my time. I didn't even start time. What time did we start? About 20 minutes ago? Should have had a time checker. I set my time, I had my timer on, but I didn't hit start. So we were almost about half done. So I think I'm making good time. Okay, so when someone asked if I have other like multiple classes, let's say you're working with intervention or you have multiple students in different classes, you can set those classes up and assign based on those. So the students, you can log them in by hand. Just by their names, or I believe you can update them or input them from Google Classroom. But if you are teaching intervention or something like that, I would do it by hand per class. And they just need the code. So they would put in like, mine is like Presu W, Presu 9, Presu 3. So you could have it by group, like your last few letters of your name in one, and then just adjust them. You can pick and choose which kids get what. And then this is where you pick the standard or the actual skill and number of questions on the assignment. So let's say I wanted to do, let's do a third grade. Let's do multiplication division within 100. It has to the right, it has the overview. These are new, this is a new feature. So before it just had, you choose mini ticket, exit ticket, regular practice. Now they give you a assignment preview, which is huge. So let's say I wanted a mini ticket, but I don't like, maybe I haven't really talked about or really focused on this question, so I'm gonna hit change and it will change the question if you don't like the wording on it, which is amazing. So you can change that and view the questions before you assign it. Another thing that's new this year is the support settings. So it says choose which students should see a more supported version of targeted Freckle or targeted practice. So I always put anyone below grade level, I believe it's 50% below or just not meeting standard, maybe it's 70%. Anyone below that would just automatically, without you having to add any accessibility features for them, it would just have them. Or you can just act, they all need it. When the younger grades, like they can all have it. It's not going to change anything. It's just kind of talking about access to their videos, practice sidebar, those types of things. So for me, I like to just give it just all. They all need the support, especially with virtual learning. And then you can assign it for future or you can assign it immediately. So what I love about this is you can assign it for future, get like 5 assignments done at one time. When you do that, let's say I'm assigning it for tomorrow. This is key, okay? It will give you a ton of random numbers in front of here. And also what student who's in first K, whatever, is gonna be able to read all of that and know what assignment to click on. Right? So you can customize your title and you can just put, let's say this is my first lesson. So I could do that. I could put, you can just put the actual standard or whatever you want to put. You can push it out directly to Google Classroom this way. You can copy the link and put it into your class website. You can send it out. We are not using Remind anymore. We're using Class Dojo, but you can just use the copy link and put it on Class Dojo. So it's super easy to create assessments for them. Alrighty. So I think I went over reports. So under reports, there are a ton of reports. You can see there's so many reports that it's not even funny. So there's a video on our resource page I'll share at the end going over the reports, but basically this is where the data piece comes in. You can group students based on how they're doing. So if you want to do breakout groups, you can use this class grouping. You can print individual report cards so it shows how they're doing on adaptive practice if they're going up and down. The best thing about adaptive is they can go back, they can regress. with them. So it's not just an upward battle. They might toggle and between those standards and moving up independently. So when you're assigning for independent practice, I would always kind of assign, especially in the younger grades, in adaptive practice, because it adapts to their level. And then anything that you are doing in class that you can support them with would be the targeted practice. And I would definitely not do any more than 3 or 5 questions and use them. I'm going to talk about innovative ways to push it out so they're not constantly on this Freckle dashboard, which is, as you know, if you've ever taught middle school or anything, if you use something too much, the kids get over it and they end up hating it. And there's so much good content on here that we really want to keep them engaged. So I'm going to show you some innovative ways to push out Freckle, but let's move on to ELA, just because I don't want to take too much time. And the way that I'm going to show you ELA is 2 ways. I'm going to show you this view from the student app, just like if I were a student. And this is more so for the younger grades. You kind of saw what it looks like for the upper grades. And I couldn't just be logged into these because it pushes me back between student and teacher, else I would have been already logged in. All right, so this is what they will see. They'll see English or they'll see math. So let's go to English. It'll have these options. What I love, like I said, they have
Word study.
little speech buttons so it can do text to speech. When they go into word study or when they go into skills practice, they have to take a pretest. And the pretests are supported as well, so it can read.
Ready to start the word study pretest? This will only take a few minutes, so try your best.
And this is something, if you have younger kids, you really want to do probably while they're on, maybe in a small group, like 2 or 3 kids, work with them on the pretest, just to kind of support them and get them through it. Once they do that, then they can do adaptive practice on their own. But it will say something like,
click the button below to listen to and spell the following word. Set. I set the bag down. Set.
so then they would type in whatever answer. Let's say they were like ST, I don't know. They don't hear it. And then it would just take them to the next question. So there's usually 3, I would say actually 5 to 10 pre-test questions, and then it will set them at their own adaptive level for word study. You don't have to do anything on your end. However, if you feel like that's not where the student really needs to be, then you can go in and override it, like we said with adaptive. All right. The other feature is skills practice. So this is independent skills. This is going to show you something probably from an older grade, a little bit older grade. It'll read you the items.
Read all of the text first, then answer the questions.
So it gives you a little bit of the directions. What I love is you cannot necessarily annotate, but you can highlight. So they have a highlight tool. So let's say you can teach them, explicitly how to use these types of things. I love how you can see the questions, but you can't access the questions right away. So we know how it's really important to teach. Look at the questions first before you dive into the text so you know what to answer, but you can't respond to them. So you can still see them, but you can't necessarily work with it yet. So once they take that pretest, that will set them at their independent reading level for skills. And that will also open up their library. So you cannot access your independent virtual library until your reading test is complete. So it'll say start the pretest, and you'll see it's the same exact pretest as the skills test. So they do have to take these pretests. If you don't want them to take the pretest, you just want to start them at a certain level, just bypass the pretest altogether and just start and assign adaptive, especially since we're not in the class to support them. If you just can't imagine like helping all these little kinders and first graders complete these pretests, then I would just suggest starting them down, and then they can prove that they can adaptively move up, which is completely fine as well. Let's see, did it log me out again? All right, I'm gonna show you how to assign, I'm gonna show you the text correlation chart. So how it correlates with like FMP and Lexile levels and grade levels, how the text in Freckle does, and then how to assign articles and get reports from ELA, and then we'll move on to the next session, or next step of this session. Anyone have any questions yet while we're waiting for my items to load? Can't see everybody, so hopefully everyone's fine. Okay.
Amanda,
Yes.
this is Madeline, and I do special ed, and I remember last year that the teachers could share their
Yes.
but my big problem was when I tried to see like what the kids were doing or where they were progressing, a lot of times it didn't show it right. And I knew I was doing it right. So I don't know, maybe if you could review that so that if I share it with the teachers, I can make sure that, okay, see, Johnny's not progressing here. So if he comes and works with me, I could assign him to do something like that, please.
Yeah. So under, are you talking about specific targeted assignment or just overall domain standard understanding?
Overall, or even the targeted, it was both. They kept coming up and said so-and-so did, and then all the dates, and then it would just keep putting the same dates. And I don't know if I did something wrong or they, you know, trying to get in, because the teachers were telling me they were using the Freckle.
So if you go to reports, they have just their report cards here. You're not going to see a lot, but let's say I wanted to print, they give you a time frame. So if I wanted to present, I don't know, last 3 months, if I wanted to print that, you can do per month, you can do per week, and you can see how they progress. There's so many ways to access that information, but I think for you, are they logging into your account or were they logging into the teacher and you were looking at the teacher's account?
I keep forgetting to unmute the teacher's account.
Okay, so then the teacher has access to this. So this is what you would kind of want to see. So it has the domains, it has where they started at and how much, okay.
The progress.
Growth, yeah, their progress. Why are you doing this? I don't know why it keeps toggling back. Okay, I guess we're just gonna look at it in print mode. In a second. But it'll show also just their weekly, like how many questions they completed, how well they did, time spent, and in what domains they spent it in. I don't know why I can't. Not letting me control this for some reason. But the reports are definitely, are definitely where I would start with that. So it kind of has their grade level. It talks about percentage correct. So out of 39 questions, she got 30, you know, so it talks about, this is a really good place to start, especially for if you're doing intervention work or working with the students. It doesn't necessarily save, obviously, so it won't have like October's report, but you can do and insert different time frames automatically as well. I printed these out and actually had them signed every week when I was in class, or it turned into every month because I found every week with 3 blocks was like too much. So and it didn't give students an opportunity to really grow that much, especially with adaptive practice. And I didn't use it all the time because remember, we don't want to use everything all the time or else it gets monotonous and we won't get the desired outcomes we want from it. So I would definitely use that data for yourself. I had my own trackers, so you could have your own tracker. Another thing is we now have to give formative assessment or formative grades in Aries. You can pick one of these or a few of these assignments or domains or by standard practices and update those grades in Aries for your formative grade. In ELA, let me just talk about, did that answer your question? Enough? Yes? Good.
Yeah, I'll just play with it and find out.
Yeah, and you can reach out to me after this or whenever, like when we start to get data. And then if you're having trouble accessing that data, you guys can always come to me to kind of learn how to do specific reports for different things. It's way easier to just reach out instead of trying to find it on Google and look through all of these 30-minute webinars to try to find exactly what you need. So yes, and when it comes to that, when we start to get data, I don't have a lot of data, so I can't show you exactly what we're using. But all right, so same thing with math by standards. We have, it looks exactly the same as math, except you have the strands. So it has reading information, literature, writing, language. You can choose your grade level. I always like to use the young, I mean, upper grade's pretty easy. I'm going to target, I think most of you are, you know, working with the lower grades. So view correlation chart. This is huge. I would print this, I would have it. They make it really easy, obviously. So first grade, it's by ABC, beginning, middle, end of year. And then it translates to grade level, your Lexile range, and then your FMP range. So I think that that's really cool to have that, but I do like how they have where they should be at the beginning, the middle, or the end of the year as far as reading for text. When you go to, let's see, standards, It doesn't have like, it has just view the resources for that standard. Let's do reading literature for first grade. When you go to, it just has assigned skills. So you can assign a text, you can assign skill practice. So let's say I want to assign a text because I want to kind of go over that. Again, you can assign different reading levels. You can also make it adaptive, which is cool. And you can choose your genre, which is awesome. So maybe you want to tie it into social studies. So you can just select social studies. You can collect, or if you want, let's say you give out surveys and your kids are really into mystery. You know, you can just choose mystery and kind of use it to start off and kick it off with those types of things. The breakdown of, oh, sorry, let's go back here. You can choose a filter by reading level. So you can do early readers, or you can choose like, I want to do beginning of second grade all the way to, I don't know, mid third grade. It will show you the articles that fall within that range. You can select domains, so specific skills practices, nonfiction domain, fiction domain. So it shows you those. So if you're working on specific items. And then you can also filter by standard. And they'll have a drop down of standards, or you can just type it in there. So let's look at come on, baby. Oh, you have to click it. Okay. So if I go here, it'll adjust. Not reading Dr. Seuss, anything. Sorry, I'm not a fan. Hunters and gatherers, let's say, because we want to tie it into social studies. I don't know. So let's say we go to the article. Before you assign it, you can choose the reading article. This is a beginning of 10th grade text, right? If we chose this one. We want it to be early reader. I really wanted to show you this feature because it's super awesome. It will read to them, and then it still has the questions. So it just has a picture. It will read to them.
Lived a very long time ago.
And then it talks about the sub skills, and it will have the questions, and they just go through it. So it looks really cool. First grade looks a little bit different. They're expected to, read on their own, but it's a little short bursts. And then again, same skill. I love how they have the questions too, so essential questions. And then as you get up, they have more vocabulary and more skills and writing components, so you can kind of see how it adapts and gets a little bit more in depth. So a lot more text. And I'm pretty sure when you assign these, they can write on them, just like with Newsella, that you can annotate and highlight and items like that. So you can assign it directly if you were working in class, or you really want to just take parts of it. You can print it with answers for yourself. I'm all about the screenshot, which we'll talk about with innovative ways, because you will need to know how to take a screenshot to insert this information into other platforms. But it's just really awesome content, or standards-based content within this platform to use. Reports, same thing. You have even more reports than math does. So you have your ELA levels, your ELA report cards that are broken down. I love how they're color coded. We can look at performance by standard, and you will kind of see examples. So our class doesn't have work, but you can look at, okay, we did a self-assessment. I did put a benchmark out there. Let's look at, okay, analyzing connections has the largest red right there, right? So we're gonna wanna focus on that skill. So it kind of will help lead. Remember, we're all about leading instruction based off of the needs for our students. So that is where the data piece comes in really helpful. Alrighty, I think I covered that. Science, I'm just gonna briefly review. It's just by instructional units, and it's the same exact thing as ELA. It shows you the NGSS standards aligned with your ELA standards, and they're all categorized by units or the umbrella strands of science. So they're kind of fun to incorporate some of the articles. Again, you have, I think, better resources like Newsella and items, but they do have activity resources. Sometimes they have videos that are pretty good. Best thing ever about Freckle is you can download every single one of their videos as an MP4. So you can upload it into any other instructional tool ever. You don't have to add a link, then they have to go to Freckle, then they have to log into Freckle to watch the video. None of that, they have to bypass that completely. So you can just download any Freckle video that you want and embed it into any other instructional platform, which is huge, which I'll show you in a second. All right, moving on, I kind of want to respect our time, so I want to just spend about 15 more minutes, and then I'll answer any questions that we have. Ooh, okay, I guess this is not letting me go back. It's taking forever. Okay. Prezis are actually a really cool way to put out instruction too. So granted, I normally wouldn't have so many tabs open at the top, but I'm gonna need them for the presentation. So let's move on. You can also, this is just a preview that I'm doing instead of presenting so I can control it. So I want to talk about inquiry-based lessons and then we'll get into innovative ways. So the inquiry-based lessons are for math. The students explore math standards and build critical thinking skills through fun real-world challenges. They're available from K all the, I think it's maybe first, I don't know, we'll look. Oh yeah, grades first all the way up. As you can see, that acronym I put at the top, the WWIET, which is when would I ever use this? These types of inquiry-based lessons answer those questions. So how can we weave in the standards into real-world context? So they have a ready-to-go presentation. Again, I would pick and choose from these. I wouldn't just use the actual pre-made lesson all the time. It's good, you know, I'll show you the components. It's awesome, but remember, you're curating learning. You're not just assigning everything on Freckle or from some online platform. You want to curate and pull what you think your students will be interested in and use the components that you need them to work with. So they have inquiry sheets. They have, they review math concepts. They have you develop a question and solve a problem. So let's dive into that real quick. If you go to math and you go down, it will have inquiry-based lessons. So when you click on that, it will take you to the inquiry-based lesson dashboard, and this is by grade level. I think I can close some of these other ones. So they start at first. So if we look at first grade, and they're broken down by obviously standard. So let's say we want to do adding and subtracting within 20. Now this is first grade, but of course some kindergartners can use these, obviously. I always say that kindergarten is like the new first grade. So a lot of times, you know, we're working at a totally different level. So you have kids coming in who have never even been to kindergarten. Then you have kids who did TK, which is basically like the new kindergarten. And so you're gonna have tons of levels coming in. But they have these videos. These are the videos that you can also download and embed onto anything. So if, let's say you're putting together a Nearpod and you want to use these videos, download it. You get to download it. So this one is all about adding and subtracting. So it will have a really cute, and I know the playback isn't going to be great, so I'm only going to share a little bit of it, but I want to show you the presentation. The videos are embedded in these presentations, which are kind of cool because it kind of walks you through. So day one, they're broken down by days. So they'll have you do a daily review. Again, you can use these directly or screenshot it. This is where, if you click, see how you can download. So you can download any one of these videos and it just sets it up in 3 minutes or less. It sets up the problem in like a cartoony kind of way.
In the middle of the wild, there is a pond that many animals use for their drinking water. The pond has thick jungle on some of its sides, but they're made up of 7 tigers, 3 lions, 12
So as you can see, it's super visual, which is amazing. So it sets up the problem, and it's not just the kids hearing you talk the whole time. And then it has, you know, what did we learn from the video? It just has talking points and items like that, which is kind of nice. And then suggested tasks for you. You can also group them. So if you want to use these, most of my direct math lessons are going to be inquiry-based lessons. I teach upper grade though. So all of my students can kind of walk through different platforms, and I have all of my standards-based videos in there and embedded. So I support those students in my time, but my whole group lessons are going to be more inquiry-based, where they're using the previous standards they learned and we're spiraling them into inquiry-based lessons. And that way I know I can engage all of my learners, and I'm not just having students take notes on standards. With our live instructions, we want to get the most out of it. So I love how they have group guidelines, but these you can explore a little bit more in depth. But I love the feature of downloading videos. They even have the inquiry sheet and your solution. They're not very friendly, in my opinion. They're kind of ugly graphic organizers. So I like to take components of it, or I'll take screenshots of it. But you can work with that. I don't have another answer for that, but. And they have the objectives clearly listed. So I love inquiry-based learning. I love that this, you know, we always try to come up with these on our own, and we don't have to anymore when it comes to math, because there's so many in this library that we have access to. All right, so that leads me to, now we finally get into kind of more innovative ways to push out instruction. You can also assign those videos through Freckle, so it'll come up on their dashboard, so you don't have to like always create your own thing like I'm going to show you. But we need some innovative ways to push out Freckle to our students virtually, right? We're competing with, and I say this as a mother of a 2nd grader now and a 7th grader, we're competing with TikTok that are at their fingertips, right? YouTube, cell phones, PlayStations, all of these things we're competing with. So we always talk about on our campus, you have to like YouTubeify yourself, right? How are you gonna engage your learners to wanna grapple with the content? Because just talking to them is not gonna, or showing them, you have to engage them in order for them to connect with you. So how can we use Freckle and all these amazing components and all this amazing content to curate student-centered learning? So a few that I'm going to go into is Seesaw and Flipgrid, obviously. I love it for math. I love it for word problems. I embed almost every single inquiry-based lesson into a Seesaw. So I was going to show you that. This one was, and it's really, she's just bright, so she didn't like add any items, but Seesaw, if you haven't heard of it, is a digital portfolio. It's basically, they have, you can output any assignment, but they have access to whiteboard features. They can do voiceovers, they can do videos, they can take pictures. You can add multiple slides. So I always like to embed the picture, but I just wanted to show you kind of how she was talking me through what she did.
To find out the total of the
Kind of low.
Equals 1,000. So I multiply 52 times.
So this is more in a digital kind of platform. And then you also have Flipgrid. Flipgrid is more like an Instagram kind of feel to it, divided by, or divided into topics, like different topics. So this is a student talking about his work.
And you draw the letters that say what the character or subject is. The boxes right there. Down here, beats. Where does the question mark live? And there is a problem that
They're so cute. So that is something that I'm in the EL coordinator, so something that's very important to me is language output, and we want to be hearing our kids, especially because they don't get a lot of opportunities to talk. We need to be requiring that they talk out and speak and explain all of these items. As we know, if you can't teach it, if you can't explain it, you probably don't really know it, right? So we need to offer these opportunities through there. So what I do is I would just take screenshots, or I would take parts of those presentations and put it on here, and then require them to then, when they're done working with the information, they can do a voiceover if they're not comfortable showing their face. We need to be respectful of students' privacy as well, but we want to make sure that they're engaged as well. And we really want to make sure they're the ones doing the learning. Think about when we're assigning Freckle, how do we know that they're the ones completing Freckle? Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I've completed some of my son's stuff in 1st grade, so I was just like, let's just finish it. You're like, here, and then you're helping them, whatever, right? So it's like, how do we know that they're really understanding? If I'm guilty of that too, if I'm guilty of helping my son just so we can get through it, so we can go do whatever we need to do, right? So how can we ensure that they're actually the ones in front of the camera or speaking? So we wanna give them a lot of options as far as that goes. All right. So that was Seesaw and Flipgrid. Another one is Wheel of Names. So this is fun. It's kind of like a choice board kind of idea. You could have a choice board aligned to this, but if you've never used Wheel of Names, you can create different wheels for different items. If you hit open, you can see I have a lot of different wheels saved, so you can just save your wheels from here. So I have different wheels for, so houses, math practice, I use it for my house points, for my behavior system at my university. You can add pictures, so you can add an image. I wanted to show you how you can add an image within text. So I have a little image. I'm sorry, I was gonna drag and drop it, but I forgot that I probably have to do this. You can customize it, you can change colors, but when you add a image to the text, it will just show up right there, which is cool. If you want it to be at the end of like your choice, I put a little rainbow, it will show up under it, which is really cool. So you can personalize it. It looks awesome. I like to add like, okay, you get to choose, and there's one where it's like no freckle today. So we spin, you can save these and embed them into your Google Sites so they can spin whenever they want to, if you want it to be like fun for them. But I like to spin sometimes with my upper graders, and it adds a bit of excitement to what type of practice are we gonna do this week? You know, you can imagine how it'd be like, so you're like, okay, do adaptive for 10 minutes. That's all that's required to do it for this week. You don't want to do this every day, like I said, but it kind of adds a bit of excitement to it. You could also have a board that has, it's linked to a choice board. So it'll say do tile, like if it's like a grid, it could be do tile like A1 or whatever. And they do that assignment that's on that choice board. Or, you know, row B, column 3, whatever's on that choice board that they can do. So you can insert the spinner, insert the choice board, and then that makes it fun for them to kind of pick and choose what they want. If it is an independent assignment, it's something that you would have to obviously assign on your end for the day. Sorry. So that's kind of Wheel of Names. My next one is gamify Freckle content. So I'm going to show you real quick how I would do a really quick, how I would take this content and make an escape room using Google Forms. I'll show you in like 1 minute. I'm like a huge advocate for deck toys, which is, I'm also a fan of Nacho Libre, if you couldn't tell. But you can embed lessons. This is a great way to push out content. I also made them for my first grade son. And he can go through, it's basically like an escape room, but it's kind of like a treasure map, and you go through and you can add items on your end. You can add YouTube videos. You can add independent practice. You can work with, you can pull study sets directly from Quizlet, which is huge. You don't have to create any of those. That's a whole nother tutorial. But yeah, GimKit, my kids love quizzes, Kahoot, those types of things. Again, with the younger grades, sometimes it's hard to get them logged in. So I suggest something like a little quick breakout room that's super virtual. You can break them out and they, you know, work with this item. So you could have the title of the escape room either be the standard or the theme. What I like to do is if we go, let's say we want them to, it could be also including math or ELA. So if I wanted it to be math content by standard, I would go to whatever standard and I would generate those practice questions. So I would view resources. I would view sample questions, and I would choose one that's pretty visual, like this money one maybe. You take a screenshot of just what you want. And then when you go back to the form and you add a question, and I don't know if a lot of you know how to do it, so they have to get the answer right to move on to the next section. But if you add in a picture, oops, don't get ahead of yourself like I do. I always drag and drop way before I need to, and then the whole thing fills. So then you have your picture, and let's say I want this to be question 1. And it says, Isabella has $6. Her mom gave her 8 more. How many dollars does she have now? The only unfortunate part about this is when you're working with little ones, you can't add the voice option to read. So you're gonna wanna add something for the little ones that would support them, or something that they could easily just know exactly what to do without that. But you want it to be required. You wanna go to response validation. Oh, sorry, you have to go to open-ended answer, sorry, short answer. And it will have response validation. This is something I use all the time with reading comprehension. So I will ask specific items, or I'll add like codes and things that they have to unscramble. So you want response validation. And we want it to be a number. So they're gonna say, what is it, 14? So we want the answer, the number to be equal to 14, and if they don't get it, we want it to have a custom message. So you can either write a hint, or you can say something like, try again. So that way, when they see it, it will not let them move to the other section, right? So let's say they put 11 here, and they go to move on to the next section, it'll say try again. So unless they say 14, then they can't come in. they can't go on to the next item. So this is fun to do in like a whole group way. You can add text. I like to take screenshots of text and ask specific questions there. It could be multiple choice, but that's not as fun because they'll just try every single multiple choice item before they can move on. So I kind of like it to have it be open-ended answer or looking for a specific text. If you want it to be, it can combine, hold on one second. My daughter's here and I have to unlock the door. All right. Sorry, I should have had the door unlocked. So that's a fun way to kind of incorporate that as well into gamifying your content. So you can play around with that a little bit. And then last is live virtual interaction. So I actually, on our resource page, I made these Zoom cards. I left the ring at school that I was making, but these are laminated. They just hold them up so that way you can virtually see your class. And any question from Freckle, because remember, we love the content in Freckle, you can just display it on your screen, and then you can have students interact with you live, whether it's using a whiteboard. If you don't have these cards and you don't want to print them out or give it to them in their swag bags, you can have just hand signals for participation. But remember that we can still use that content in a really creative way without having to always have them log into Freckle, right? Because a lot of our middle schoolers hate Freckle. If you use it with fidelity in multiple subjects, then they're gonna end up really disliking it, and we don't want them to dislike it because it's amazing. It offers amazing content. Alrighty. So key takeaways, and then I'll open it up for questions. Key takeaway, I hope you remember that you are a curator of learning, right? You are the expert, you are the facilitator. I encourage you to use design thinking to really empathize with your students, get a feel for them. You can still create surveys on Google Forms with pictures for your kindergartners, your first graders, your second graders to take that are, you have access to all this technology. You just have to be creative with it and how you do that. So for example, I really want to know what my students in 7th grade, what does their home life look like? What do their schedules look like? How many kids are they taking care of? What do their parents do? Are they away at work? What time do they normally wake up at? What time are they going to bed? What do they eat? Like, I just want to know all of these items. Not only do I want to know about their life schedule, I want to know about how they learn. What are their favorite platforms to use? What are their favorite subjects? What are their what are their interests? So you really want to get a good feeling of your students and know all the things about them, and then co-design and create these virtual experiences with and for your students. What I loved is just that thought of creating that end-to-end experience throughout the year and then incorporating items instead of just creating these like events. Like, I need to teach this standard, so I'm going to do this lesson and I'm going to teach this event. How does it build into the world? How can we help them retain information while keeping them interested? And then also use different instructional tools. So there's a lot more instructional tools that I haven't gone over, like different platforms, and you can use Freckle content and embed it into those platforms. So I hope that this kind of opened up your mind a little bit, but it also makes it a lot less stressful when you don't have to look at every core curriculum to a T, when you don't have to look at every supplemental curriculum to a T. Like, when you realize I get to curate, all I have to know is my standards. And then you can pick and pull. Backwards planning should be, you are looking at the standards. You're not taking wit and wisdom and backward planning. You should not be doing that. You should be looking at your standard, and you should be backwards planning based on that, depending on who the kids you have are and what you really want them to learn. So with that being said, there is a resource page that I will add to the text box. We started a scholarship prep teacher, Santa Ana teacher website, and it has all of these supplemental resources and links. So if you were to hit Freckle, it will take you to this Prezi. I will add, when I stop recording, I'll add the live link so you can rewatch it. It has all of the little types of things like reports and those items I just put from YouTube, inquiry-based lessons, overviews, items like that. Review of math, social studies, ELA, and then anything that I talked about, like it has the editable template link, and if you click here, it just goes straight to the PDF, so you can print those out and make them yourself. I just made them yesterday. They have a link to the Seesaw website if you're interested in exploring that, and then also to the Wheel of Names website, so you have access to those. You can also, I know you came to Freckle, which I'm really happy about, but all of the other supplemental resources are awesome, and so they have their own resource pages as well, where they'll enter their live lessons and have any tutorials or resources that you may need in any of those supplemental curriculums. if that makes sense. So I hope that that helps. I'm going to send this link right now in our chat box, and then I'll open it up to you guys. If you have specific questions, feel free to question me throughout the year. Just send me an email about specifics. You don't have to try to go Google it and weave through those types of, sorry, I'm trying to find the chat box as I'm talking. Chat box as we are doing this. Okay, I'm gonna, do they have TK? They don't have TK, but you can align reading patches. Yes, you can align, okay. Benchmark, I got one question. It says, can you align reading passages by benchmark goals? So when they take assignments, if they're under a certain percentage, they can reassign based on what percentage they fall under, which is really awesome. Another thing is when they take a benchmark, it will have an option for you to assign those specific standards after you get your benchmark data. I don't think I have benchmark. Let me see if I have benchmark data to be able to show you. When you go to assessments and reports, but like Kamala asked that question, they have, as you saw, early reader is basically TK. You know, you can use those. It's just a picture and it reads you a question and you can answer it, so they can grapple with the ELA content. And then math is just basic math facts, like addition facts. So you could also use those for TK. So they don't have specific TK content, but they have very early supports. So let's,
I have a question.
yes.
In regards to TK, do you feel this is a better platform, or do you feel ST is a better platform for TKers specifically?
It just, I think TK, or sorry, I think ST Math is great for conceptual learning. I like it. I would say both. I would say to use both. I might do, how about this? I would use ST Math independently for the TKers, so anything independent, and I would use Freckle for your lessons if you wanted to use it for your live lessons. That's what I personally would do.
Could I, when you do the live lessons, I can share the screen and do
yes, just like I did right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what because I'm not sure how as a TK student who doesn't necessarily have a parent right next to them, if they could navigate it as easy as they could with ST Math. Because ST Math, you just hit the cone and then you go. You know what I mean?
No, that's exactly what I wanted to know. Which one would be better utilized as an independent? Yeah. Which one would be better utilized with me? So thank you.
And that's to start off the year. Again, you don't know your students yet. That's the thing. So when you know your students, they might come at you at all different levels, and some might be able to grapple with the Freckle adaptive by themselves. They might want to do more work, or you know, not everyone loves ST Math. So you kind of have to see what your your students those choices. So yeah, it's kind of an unknown. It's kind of fun, but we have to be flexible. And remember, we're curating these learning experiences for our students with our students. So it's going to look different for everybody, every class, every year, through all the teachers. So, okay, so these assessments, let's say I was doing C growth report. This is just a assignment, I believe I assigned. I don't know when I assigned it, but it'll show overall growth by student. So it'll show, you know, and every time you give a benchmark, it keeps a date. So she went from 77% in December, and in April, she was 94% in that measurement and data. We worked a lot with measurement and data. So it's kind of cool. You can look directly by domains, the breakdown, and then you can look directly by standards. And then the feature I was talking about is the reassign. So you can reassign and they'll give you options. So do you want to reassign it to struggling students? Do you want to reassign it to approaching or proficient? So one thing I would use, especially if we have supports with our SPED teachers and everything, I might reassign it for struggling students, but make sure that they have support in their small group to be able to work through it at the same time, if that makes sense. So like reassigning something to struggling students who didn't understand it the first time without support isn't going to help them. Does that make sense? It's just going to be more work. It's kind of like punishment. So that's the only reason I would reassign something, is if they were having those supports in the afternoon sessions with the intervention teachers. But that way you don't have to keep creating assignments. You can just keep reassigning that topic. It does switch up questions every single time. It's not going to be the same. That's what another awesome thing about targeted practice and adaptive is, it always is changing the questions. So that's cool. Any other, let me see. I don't have any questions in the chat box other than that. So anyone else have any specific questions? Again, it's just play around with it. Rostering your kids, like I said, it's super easy. There's also the video on our resource page. And oh, one last thing I didn't go over, activity feed. This is really cool. I like to give some points, and I like how it highlights some house points for our students or class points based off of these. So it says you can choose whatever section you want it to be. So if I just wanted math, which I only have math data, so that's what's selected right now. But it shows who had the most correct questions, which is awesome for the kids who do really well. But it has most time practice and highest accuracy, and it doesn't matter how many questions. So you could have students who never get like awards in anything or never get like badges in anything, and they could get like, oh, but I practiced a lot of time. Or you can choose, that was obviously the last 3 months, but if you just wanted to do, okay, let's see who worked today, or let's see who worked the most this week, and you can reward those students based off of their effort, not just their academic progress, which is really cool. And then I have to do last 3 months though, because that's when I had some data from it. I love how it shows by color. It will show a breakdown of how they did. This is just activity. So this is what your students are doing. You can show how much time they practiced, how many questions they completed, and what was their last practice. Was it adaptive? Was it a math assessment? Was it fact practice? How are they doing? So it's just a cool overall. When you click their name, it will show exactly what they did. A breakdown of time. You will see these kids do things at like 11 p.m. at night, 12 a.m. in the morning. And they're working super hard. And so those are times where I would go in and ask if they need more support, what's going on at home. Like, we want them to get a good night's sleep. We don't want them stressing out. So I love that they do have the time completed. They have what grade level they're working at, time practiced, and then their scores. Again, from there, you can go in and see specific questions and how they did on specific, this was fact mastery. So you can kind of see how they were doing, like in addition, what levels they're on. For these are fact practices. So like the reports are endless. I didn't want this whole PD to be about reports, but you could just play around with reports, but you can't until you have student data. So it's really hard to like understand what reports you have and what you have access to without student data. So you have to have them doing some things in order to see what you have. And again, you can assign these. So let's say I really want him to be at a higher level. If you go to reports, it will show you exactly what they've mastered in green, what they're currently practicing, and what they have not practiced. So in addition, he's good in addition. Subtraction, he still needs to work on some of those subtraction facts. So you can assign it based on that as well. Multiplication, again, he has a lot to know to build fluency, to have that understanding. And then division is always the hardest one. But I love how they have a breakdown, and then you can assign specifically based on that as well. Because as you know, I think this is one of the biggest ones. We were talking about what every student needs to have after 3rd grade, their multiplication facts for any other math. So it's kind of a foundational skill. And we don't want to have them constantly going to other sites and things to try to use those. You know, you want something that's engaging. I think that their math fact practice is really engaging and easy, and it's something they can do on their own, or it's something that can be assigned. Let's see. I have one more question. Oh, okay. I think we're done now. So if there isn't any other questions, I think we're done. So you guys are done for today. I'm going to show you an ad. Thank you, Mrs. Schlotman, for putting the survey into the session for me. I was going to present or just show you the last 2 slides. So we do need a feedback survey by the end of today. And then there's also, if you guys want to jot 3 things that, same thing as yesterday, 3 wonderings you had, 3 things that you were excited about, and 1 challenge that you're ready to embrace, and send it to your admin. And thank you guys for coming. I'm super happy. Reach out to me by email. Let me know if you need support. I know a lot of us don't want to, we're tired. We have a lot to do. And you're like, I want to work with this later. So feel free at any point during the year to reach out to me, and yeah, thank you. So remember to fill out your feedback survey.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you guys soon. Tomorrow, or no, next week we have our organization, right?
Thank you.
See you guys later. Bye.